An old woman is encouraged to sing in a talent show as a joke, but her voice surprises everyone. Malicious laughter echoed through the Biltmore Theater as the 78-year-old woman climbed onto the stage with her cane. But when Susie Miller opened her mouth to sing, the entire world stopped to listen to the voice that had remained silent for 30 years. Subscribe if this story finds you and let me know where in the world you're watching from. The Biltmore Theater gleamed under lighting carefully designed for the Hartwick Foundation's annual talent show, one of Manhattan's most prestigious philanthropic institutions. Crystals reflected light in all directions. High-fashion dresses glided across the marble floor, and elegant laughter echoed among $200 champagne flutes. Among the impeccably dressed crowd, one figure stood out considerably. Susie Miller, a 78-year-old lady, walked with cautious steps, supported by her worn wooden cane. Her navy blue dress, though clean and well-pressed, evidently did not come from the same boutiques that dressed the other ladies present. Her white hair was tied in a simple bun, without the elaborate hairstyles that adorned the other women. Susie observed the environment with curiosity, her clear eyes absorbing every detail. She had been invited by her granddaughter, Emily, who worked as an administrative assistant at the foundation. "Come, Grandma. It will be fun. I got an extra ticket, and you love music," Emily had said on the phone. And indeed, Susie loved music more than anyone there could imagine. "Excuse me, but this area is reserved for special guests," declared a haughty voice. The woman addressing Susie wore a Chanel suit and displayed a badge identifying her as Victoria Hartwick, president of the foundation. "My granddaughter invited me," Susie replied calmly. "Emily Thompson, she works for you." Victoria arched a perfectly outlined eyebrow at the S. The new administrative assistant. Her gaze traveled Susie from head to toe. "I see. Well, perhaps you would feel more comfortable in the back area. The chairs are more suitable." Susie nodded without protest, understanding perfectly the subtext. As she walked away, she heard Victoria murmur to a colleague, "Really? Allowing employees to bring just anyone? We're reducing the level of the event every year." Seated in the last row, Susie adjusted her reading glasses to examine the event program. The annual talent show was, in essence, a display of the artistic abilities of New York's elite, people whose main careers were in investment banks, law firms, and multinational corporations, but who cultivated artistic hobbies like collectors of rare wines. From her discreet position, Susie observed Emily running from one side to the other, coordinating details, checking lights and sound. Her granddaughter had gotten the job just 3 months ago and was clearly trying to impress. "Is this seat taken?" asked an elderly man, pointing to the seat next to Susie. "No, feel free," she replied with a smile. "Joseph Keating," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Susie Miller," she responded, returning the gesture. "First time at the event?" "Yes, my granddaughter works here." Joseph nodded. "My son is the sound engineer. I come every year, but I always stay back here. The view is better, and the people are more interesting." Susie smiled, grateful for the friendly company. The event followed its predictable course. A banker intoned an opera aria with impeccable technique and absent emotion. A neurosurgeon performed Chopin on the piano with mathematical precision. A young heir recited Shakespeare with perfect diction and superficial understanding. During the intermission, Susie took the opportunity to go to the bathroom. Upon returning, she found Victoria Hartwick and 2 men in suits talking animatedly near her row. As she passed by them, she heard her name. "So, it's decided. The lady, what was it again? Miller, will be our special surprise," Victoria was saying, a calculated smile on her lips. Susie slowed her pace, intrigued. One of the men noticed her. "Ah, Mrs. Miller, we were just talking about you. Victoria turned, her smile not reaching her eyes. Mrs. Miller, what a lovely coincidence. Let me introduce Philip Davenport, our artistic director, and Trevor Hansen, our master of ceremonies. Philip extended his hand with exaggerated enthusiasm. We had a brilliant idea. As part of this year's diversity celebration, we would like to invite someone from the community to participate, and we thought of you. Susie tilted her head slightly. Participate how? Sing, exclaimed Trevor. Victoria mentioned that you appreciate music. We have an open number at the end of the first part. Nothing elaborate, just a simple song to show that our event is inclusive. Susie immediately perceived the true intention. The moment of diversity would, in reality, be a form of entertainment at her expense. The little old lady out of place trying to compete with trained artists. A joke that would reinforce instead of diminish social barriers. I don't know if it would be appropriate, Susie began. We insist, interrupted Victoria. It will be charming. At that moment, Emily quickly approached, concern evident on her face. Grandma, is everything okay? Mrs. Hardwick, I hope you're not bothering my grandmother. On the contrary, dear, Victoria replied. We were inviting your lovely grandmother to participate in the show. A musical number. Emily paled. But Grandma doesn't. I'll accept, Susie suddenly declared, her voice firm. Grandma, Emily seemed horrified. Trust me, dear, Susie squeezed her granddaughter's hand. It will be interesting. The minutes preceding Susie's performance were filled with whispers and poorly disguised laughter. Victoria circulated among the guests, preparing them for the special moment that was about to come. Backstage, Emily tried to convince her grandmother to give up. Grandma, they're just wanting to have fun at your expense. I know these people. Please don't do this. Susie calmly adjusted the brooch on her dress. A small pearl, surrounded by small blue stones, the only jewelry she wore. There are moments, Emily, when we need to let people think they have control. What do you mean by that? Watch and learn, dear. Trevor took the stage with his professional smile. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special number tonight. In the spirit of community inclusion, we've invited Mrs. Susan Miller to share her talent with us. Miss Miller is the grandmother of our dedicated Emily from the administrative team, and she will grace us with, which song did you choose, Mrs. Miller? Summertime, Susie replied with a calm voice. Ah, a Gershwin classic. Quite a challenge, commented Trevor with excessive enthusiasm that only highlighted his expectation for a fiasco. Well, without further ado, Mrs. Susan Miller. Susie walked slowly to the center of the stage, leaning on her cane. She made sure to appear more fragile than she really was, reinforcing the image they expected to see. The pianist looked at her with a mixture of pity and resignation, playing the introductory chords with professional disinterest. When the first note escaped Susie's lips, time seemed to freeze. The voice that filled the theater did not belong to the fragile old lady. Everyone saw. It was a deep voice, rich in textures, with the unmistakable timbre of someone who mastered not just the technique, but the soul of jazz. It was a voice that narrated decades of experience, love, loss, and resilience. The pianist, initially uninterested, almost missed the next chord, his wide eyes fixing on Susie with amazement. Quickly, he composed himself and began to accompany her with renewed enthusiasm, his fingers dancing over the keys with true inspiration. The audience, who seconds before had smiled with malicious anticipation, now watched in absolute silence. Victoria Hardwick, occupying a privileged place in the first row, had her lips parted in evident shock. As the song progressed, a subtle transformation occurred. Susie seemed to grow on stage, her posture becoming more erect, her gestures more confident, The cane, which before seemed a necessity, was now just an accessory. Her hands, which many had noticed as worn by time, now moved with the grace of an experienced artist, punctuating musical phrases, creating images in the air. Her eyes, previously humble and reserved, now shone with intensity, connecting with each member of the audience. In the last row, Joseph Keating slightly nodded his head to the rhythm of the music, a knowing smile on his lips. As Susie sang the final verse, extending the last note with impressive control, a man in the third row abruptly stood up. It was Leonard Kingston, music critic for the New York Times and one of the most respected figures in the city's cultural scene. "My God," he exclaimed, loud enough to be heard in the first rows, "it's Susan Hayes." The name provoked a wave of whispers that spread through the audience. Confused looks alternated with expressions of late recognition. Susie concluded the song and made a simple bow. The momentary silence was broken by an explosion of applause, initially hesitant, then growing in intensity until transforming into a standing ovation. Trevor returned to the stage, visibly disconcerted. "Mrs. Miller, or should I say Mrs. Hayes, it seems we have a celebrity among us." Susie smiled modestly. "Susan Hayes Miller is my full name. I haven't used it professionally for a long time." For many in the audience, especially the younger ones, the name still didn't mean much. But for jazz connoisseurs and the older ones, Susan Hayes was a legend. One of the most acclaimed jazz singers of the 60s and 70s, winner of 3 Grammys, and one of the first American artists to tour the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Leonard Kingston approached the stage. "Mrs. Hayes, your performance at Carnegie Hall in 1968 was one of the most extraordinary musical experiences of my life. What happened? You simply disappeared in the late 80s. Susie, or Susan, nodded with a serene smile. "Life happened, Mr. Kingston. Choices were made, priorities changed, but music never left my heart." As the second part of the show continued, Susie was surrounded by admirers, journalists, and the curious. Victoria Hartwick, now excessively solicitous, insisted that Susie occupy a place in the first row, where an artist of your caliber deserves to be. During the cocktail that followed the event, Joseph Keating approached again. "You didn't fool me for a second, Susie Q," he said, using the nickname that only her fellow musicians knew. "Joey Blue," she responded with a warm smile. "I thought I recognized you. The years have been kind." Joseph had been a renowned trumpeter who frequently accompanied Susan in her performances. Like her, he had stepped away from the spotlight decades ago. "They're asking why you disappeared," commented Joseph. "Still keeping the mystery?" Susie observed the hall, where Emily animatedly conversed with Leonard Kingston. The truth was never a mystery, just a choice that few would understand. Later that night, in her modest apartment in Queens, Susie told Emily the complete story. Not the edited version that the press knew, but the truth that only her family knew. "At the height of my career, your father was 10 years old," explained Susie, showing Emily an old photo album. "Robert was a sensitive, shy child. Your father, my first husband, had passed away 2 years before, and Robert suffered from the paternal absence." The pages of the album showed Susan Hayes on glamorous stages, alongside jazz legends, on magazine covers. "Tours kept me away for months. Robert began having problems at school, severe anxiety. No babysitter or relative could replace the maternal presence he needed." Emily observed the photographs with fascination. Her father never talked much about his childhood. "In 1988, I received an invitation for a world tour that would last a year. It would be the pinnacle of my career. At the same time, Robert entered a deep depression. The doctors were clear. He needed stability, my constant presence." Susie carefully closed the album. I made my choice without hesitation. I canceled the tour, refused future contracts, and dedicated myself entirely to being a mother. We moved to a small town. I adopted my married name Miller and began a simple life, giving music lessons to local children. Did you never miss it? The applause, the fame, the music? Asked Emily. The music? Always. But I never stopped singing. I just changed my audience, from the great concert halls to classrooms, community choirs, and eventually to you and your brother. Susie smiled, recalling precious memories. As for fame, it's ephemeral, Emily. Love is not. When your father graduated from college, healthy and confident, when I met your children, when I saw the family we built, I knew I had made the right choice. Each moment with you was worth more than any applause. The next morning, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. The story of the rediscovered legend had spread like wildfire. Interview offers, recording contracts, invitations for special performances. The world that Susan Hayes had left behind 3 decades ago was eager for her return. Emily, concerned about the sudden exposure, found her grandmother calmly preparing tea in the kitchen. "Grandma, are you okay? There are reporters on the sidewalk." Susie calmly nodded. "This will pass, dear. It always does. But are you going to accept any of these offers?" The man from Sony talked about a 3-album contract. "We'll see," replied Susie. "First, I need to resolve a pending matter." That afternoon, as arranged by phone, Victoria Hartwick arrived at Susie's apartment, visibly uncomfortable about being in such a modest neighborhood. "Mrs. Hayes, I have no words to express my deepest admiration for your extraordinary talent," Victoria began, her tone excessively effusive, "and I would like to extend my sincere apologies for any initial misunderstanding. If I had known who you really were—" "Precisely that is the point, Mrs. Hartwick," Susie gently interrupted. "You are only here now with this sudden respect because you discovered who I really was. But I have always been the same person." Victoria looked away, uncomfortable. "I didn't invite you here to embarrass you," continued Susie, "but to offer an opportunity." Opportunity. The Hartwick Foundation has impressive programs for privileged young people. But what interests me is your reach to less favored communities. Well, we have some initiatives. Victoria began, hesitant, that receive less than 2% of your annual budget, according to my granddaughter, completed Susie. "I propose a partnership. I will agree to do an exclusive benefit concert for the foundation, which will certainly attract substantial attention. In exchange, the foundation will initiate a serious music education program in low-income public schools." Victoria blinked, clearly calculating the value of the proposal. A concert by Susan Hayes, in her first official return to the stage after 30 years, would be a historic event. "We would have to discuss the details, of course, but it seems like an interesting proposal." "Excellent," smiled Susie. "Emily will help with the details. Oh, and she will be promoted to coordinator of the new program with the respective salary adjustment." Victoria's smile momentarily faltered, but she quickly recovered her professional composure. "Of course we can discuss that too." 6 months later, the Hayes Music Education Program had been implemented in 12 public schools in New York. Susan Hayes' benefit concert at Lincoln Center was the cultural event of the year, raising enough funds to guarantee the program for 5 years. Susie, however, refused all other offers to return to her musical career permanently. Instead, she chose to dedicate her time to the program, visiting schools, guiding teachers, and occasionally singing for children who had no idea of her past fame, but who looked in wonder at the white-haired lady whose voice transformed the air around them. On an autumn afternoon, while observing a class in the Bronx, Susie noticed a shy little girl who watched everything with attentive eyes but refused to participate. "What's your name, dear?" asked Susie, sitting next to her. "Maria," the girl responded almost in a whisper. "You know, Maria, I was also very shy when I was a child. But you sing so beautifully without fear." Susie smiled. "The secret is not to not have fear. It's not letting fear decide for you." Taking the child's small hand between her own, already marked by time, Susie continued, "We all have a song inside us, Maria. Some share it with the whole world, others with just a few special people. It doesn't matter the size of the audience, what matters is the truth in your voice." As she helped Maria join the circle of children, Susie reflected on life's ironies. Her greatest legacy would not be the acclaimed albums or historic performances, but moments like this, connecting with a frightened child, showing her her own worth. In the end, fame was just a passing note. The true power of music, like life, was in its capacity to connect, heal, and transform, one person at a time. And that was a song worth singing, with or without applause. If you've come this far and this story has touched your heart, I invite you to keep this faith alive with us by subscribing to the channel and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any stories that touch the soul. And if this story has moved you, give it a like so we can continue sharing more stories like this one, made with all our hearts. Until next time.